Hello, everybody, and welcome to another day live at the Waterhole. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and I'll be the voice that you'll be hearing for the next 2 hours. And for those of you that haven't joined us, it's your first time, this is a live and interactive safari show. So what you're seeing right now in Madikwe Game Reserve, which is in South Africa, is happening as we speak, which is amazing. So if you're wondering how on earth do you ask questions, if you'd like to ask questions, it's also okay to sit quietly and, of course, watch the show, but I don't like to hear the sound of my own voice. So I love it when all of you get involved and engage. So there are a couple of ways you can ask questions. If you're watching via YouTube, you can use the live chat there. You can head over to the WildEarth website, use the question box. Otherwise, you can use X or Twitter, as it was once previously known as. Just remember to hashtag WildEarth so that the directors, and Luyanda is directing today, so he can see what you're saying. All those questions will be passed on to me. So I'm looking forward to having some chats. It's a wonderful Sunday. And yeah, who knows, maybe some of you might have a gin and tonic in hand or a nice cold soda, but let's make it a fun one. And we're off to a good start though. This is one of my favorite water holes, Tau. There's always a lot of action that goes on here. If the mammals aren't around and the birds are normally by. And well, they keep us entertained. And there we go. Colonel Panic, you've said, hello, Taylor. Hello, Colonel Panic. Thank you so much for jumping on board this Sunday afternoon. Is there anything that you're hoping to see, perhaps? You can always let me know. And who knows, maybe the cameras will make it happen for us. We have got access to so many different cameras all over South Africa, as well as in Zimbabwe and Kenya, which is quite special. So unfortunately, I don't have any audio at the moment, but I believe that there is an obnoxious ticking sound. There is an electric fence that's just around Tau Lodge, which is just to the left of where the camera is pointing at the moment. And sometimes when vegetation gets stuck on these electric fences, it shorts it. So it makes a ticking sound. Hopefully, we won't be able to do anything about that, unfortunately. We're going to have to wait for that to be fixed by the lodge. There we go. Now I can hear a little bit, but we won't have the ambient sound up too loud, just because of that noise that I was chatting about. And then I see that there is a question from Shiv, which I'll quickly answer. You said, good morning, Taylor. You finally managed to catch up with me, and that you've managed precisely 60 seconds of the last couple of days. So you've asked me if I can please arrange my stints for when you're off work and you're working from home. I'll try my best. Please send me your schedule, Shiv, and I will plan accordingly. That's very funny. No, it's good to be back, of course. I'll do better, as they say. But what we're going to do now is we're just going to take a break from the wildlife very briefly, and we're going to go and check out what the weather's like at all of the locations. As you can see, it's pretty much a scorcher across South Africa, a little bit cooler towards the east coast, and then in Kenya, just with high 20s, so a nice day. They're probably prepping for a thunderstorm, as they typically do on these hot afternoons. Although the clouds look like they're rolling in on Madikwe Game Reserve, and I look outside and it's It's interesting what's happening with the weather at the moment. There is a big weather system that is forming from Madagascar and then moving west towards the east coast of South Africa, and actually just a little bit north of South Africa, more towards Mozambique. But we will be affected by that weather system. It kind of, if it does make landfall, which it is predicted to make landfall, I think by Wednesday. Then we should see a fair amount of rain. It will come through. It'll go through Mozambique, maybe touch even Zimbabwe, potentially even go towards Botswana, and then it normally also comes down to South Africa. And we are in dire need of the rain. As you can see in Madikwe, it's already looking, well, some of the trees are still green, but there's really not much grass around at the moment. And the grass that has been around, in fact, where I live, and most of the low felt in South Africa, so just a bit further to the east and south from where Madikwe is already brown and has been grazed down to the ground, which is not looking good for our dry season that will start fairly soon. It does mean that we should have more productive water holes, though. Animals will be coming in now that there aren't as many little pools and puddles of water around. They'll have to come to the more permanent sources to come and drink. That means a lot of elephant action and the chaos that kind of goes with it. And speaking of Kenya with the cooler temperatures, let's go check out the old Donyo cam and see what animals are coming down for a drink. Oh, right on time. And look at this waterhole. So we're actually seeing an overflow. I don't know if you were able to see that. I'll chat more about that in a moment. So that could be from rain or the fact that the waterhole itself is also overflowing. It gets pumped with water. But I suspect with those big clouds forming in the background, it's just been plenty rain. And the oxpeckers, what is a giraffe without an oxpecker, right? Plenty of them doing their jobs and scissoring through the coats of the giraffe trying to get any of the parasites. There we go. So now you can kind of see. So to the left is, you want to see like a little stone wall that normally holds the water, and then you can see an excessive amount of water just to the right. But you start to move away from the water hole itself, and you can just see how saturated the ground is. So I suspect that most of this is in fact from the rain. There's even a little bird just having a bath. I didn't see what it was. A little bit tricky, but maybe we'll get some other views of other birds doing the things around the water. Lots of butterflies flittering about too. You normally see glimpses of them. Looks like there's some larger butterfly individuals at the back, maybe some swallowtails, some swordtails, or caraxi species. A bit difficult to always tell with the cameras. This is where a pair of binoculars comes in handy. Kenango, you said happy Sunday. And you said it's great to have me with you. Oh, it's a pleasure. I feel like I'm the lucky one.
Out in the wild, life moves fast. To capture the action, you've got to be in the right spot at the wrong time. Now, incredible animal behavior, selected from amazing amateur and professional footage, to reveal the secret lives of animals in motion. This is raw nature, caught in the act.
It's always so difficult to try and keep an eye on the giraffe when they keep dropping their heads to have a sip of water. It's not often that you get to spend a lot of time with giraffe as they drink water. In fact, most people that go on safari will probably not see a giraffe stretching down and showing their amazing flexibility. And that is because they don't have to drink water every single day. They do get a lot of moisture from the vegetation that they're feeding on, all the leaves and other things. But when there's water available, animals will drink. They'll just keep drinking because why not? Especially if it is easy and it's near your surroundings. You don't have to venture too far away. Then of course you're going to drink as much as you can. And at this particular waterhole, we see giraffe daily coming down to have a drink. And they do spend quite a bit of time with their heads down like that. And they quickly get up. They're far more graceful than I am. If I had to try and mimic a similar position, it would be a disaster. I'd probably split my pants and then I'd fall face first into the water. It might be quite entertaining. Perhaps I shall have to do it and film it. There's even a little oxpecker that's right in between the back legs of this giraffe. And that's where I would be. Not necessarily maybe the first place that you think you want to sit, maybe more comfortable out in the neck. But if you are feeling hungry, I can bet that there are far more ticks gathering in between the folds of the skin, between the back legs and on the inside. And then there's one oxpecker that's just dropped down to the chest of the giraffe, and you can see how many ticks are all gathering in those folds of skin. It's nice and warm, and also quite protected when you're wedged in between the folds of skin. Oxpeckers might have to work a little bit harder to dislodge those ticks, but definitely worth it as the meal is much larger. And Billy, you said it looks like the Kenyan bush is so lush. It is. It's typical for, well, I say for this time of the year, but the long rains in Kenya are going to start now. April and May are normally big rainy seasons, even of course in March. Um, but this year, East Africa has had phenomenal rain, specifically Kenya, and I have spoken about it a couple of times. Typically in February, it's dry, but it's like there was just no gap between the short and the long rains this year. It's just been flooding in many, many different parts of the country. I'm not sure if it's flooding right now. I don't think so, but it is good news for the animals because just like South Africa was in a drought a couple of years ago, Kenya had also been experiencing one, and it took them a little bit longer to overcome it. So you know what it's like. The weather is in these ebbs and flows of droughts and then excessive rain. But it is nice to see it so lovely, lush and green. It's very different uh, to what I'm looking out at the moment. South Africa, and especially the low-veld areas, should also be lovely, lush and green like this, but they're not at the moment. And then Shiv, you said it's a little bit like evolution forgot that giraffes still have to drink. You're 100% right. Absolutely. Giraffe look like they're adapted to, drink in the hollows of boskia trees, shepherd trees that quite often fill up with water, or maybe even a hollow in a baobab. But yeah, not stretching all the way down to the bottom. But they are vulnerable, but with a bit of practice, as you can see, they figure out what technique works best for them. They don't all have exactly the same technique. Sometimes you see some giraffe that stretch their legs out even wider. I suppose it's like with people, right? We've all got different flexibility capabilities. So each to their own. Phil from Myrtle Beach, you've said this is your happy space, and seeing these amazing creatures live from South Africa recharges your mental health battery for an upcoming work week. I completely agree. I think it's so important that we acknowledge and take time to recharge our mental health batteries, as you put it, Bill. And this is a wonderful escape, just to be able to sit and listen to the sounds of nature and to enjoy watching wildlife with a community that has a similar mindset is also great. I know a lot of you that watch the shows regularly and you chat on the same platform quite regularly. I think it's connected people that probably would have never crossed paths before. So, what a wonderful opportunity. But we'll keep an eye out as to what goes on at the Aldonyo camera. We're going to head back down to South Africa now and check out Cat Eye Pan. Wow. I'm just going to wait for the audio to come through on my side. Oh, look, we've got dragonflies. Of course, we've got an enormous elephant bull. I bet he's much bigger than what he actually is, but the camera is positioned quite low down, which affords us an interesting view. It looks like he's already splashed himself with some water. Are you having a drink now? Or are you going to continue to try to cool yourself down? Okie dokie. Sorry, everybody. We had a little bit of a technical issue at Cat Eye Pan. So we're back at our Daniel. Hopefully we can get that all sorted out. So I think what we're going to do now is actually just take a moment to listen to all the birds and the insects. Oh, and maybe we even get some vocalizations from the baboons that are coming for a drink.
This is On Safari. Now remember, this is live and interactive, So we'd love to hear from you.
To be having these incredible experiences in this wild underwater forest.
It was just one of those things which I don't think I'll ever see again in my life.
Thanks for joining us on our sunrise safari.
Isn't this so fascinating, watching a troop of yellow baboons all interacting with one another around the waterhole? You would see briefly that someone was in trouble, and then one of the larger males chased that individual around. You can hear the youngsters all making those high-pitched squeals. And it looks like the one baboon that's just moving up off and to the left towards the impala might be a female. I don't know if you saw, she had her tail raised, kept looking back at that big male as if to kind of present herself to say, hey, I might be interested, but he doesn't seem interested in her. It's gone the other way. So there are 6 species of baboons that we would typically see, and in Amboseli we normally see the yellow baboons, which is what we're looking at now, and sometimes the olive baboons, and then in South Africa we are strictly seeing the chukma baboon, which is quite a large species in comparison. And I came across an interesting study a little while ago, And to be honest, I haven't dived down into too much more. But the study is basically around the hybridizing between yellow and olive baboons, and specifically within this Amboseli region. So if you are wondering where Old Donyo is basically a wilderness area that's like sandwiched between uh, Amboseli and Tsavo National Park in Kenya, which is super interesting. It's an amazing ecosystem. It's so diverse. And this study is being done by the Amboseli Baboon Research Project, which is the longest standing um, uh, primate studies in the world. And from what I've read, it started around 1971, which was quite spectacular. Also, look at that impala ram. Look how he's posturing and showing off too. See how his tail is raised, how he stiffened his back, lowering his head. You can see, he's doing it towards another male. There's a female jumping in between too. You got to look impressive for the girls, especially when you're around a waterhole, right? We'll see if they maybe clash heads. But anyways, back to the baboons. So that's so fascinating. So obviously with these baboons being studied, they'll be following different troops, just like we follow lions and leopards for the big carnivore projects like Panthera, as an example, or even the hyena research that is some of the best hyena research in the world that's been done in Kenya. You start to familiarize yourself with, well, in this case, different troops of baboon. And it has been recorded multiple times where yellow baboons have actually mated with olive baboons, and they will rear very successful young, which is so fascinating. They have then also done genetic testing to confirm this. So it's really amazing just to see how two species are hybridizing with one another and probably creating something even stronger and better genetics. It's like, what you say, you get dogs that are, bred specifically for certain roles. You often get those purebred dogs that will have a lot of conditions. They might have a predisposition to hip dysplasia or pancreatitis or something along those lines, whatever the case may be. But often when you get dogs of different species that breed with one another, their genetics would be typically stronger, and not necessarily. I mean, obviously, it's quite technical, and there's a lot of ifs and buts in there. But if we just kind of generalize a little bit. And then, Shiv, you've asked, do baboons have a dominant male and a female in the group? So we've actually been lucky, because the last time I hosted the show, we had an amazing baboon sighting at Juma. So we've been able to dive deep into the social dynamics of baboons. And it's rather intricate. So you'll have a group of dominant males, and they kind of run the show within the troop. And I'm sure they have their favorite females, but they will be responsible for protecting the troops and mating with the various females. But again, baboons can be quite amorous, and you'll often see youngsters mounting with one another, and some youngsters even mounting slightly older females, this type of thing. Whether, of course, their sperm is fertile, and if they'd be, producing young, probably not at such a young age. But it's mainly going to be the responsibility of the big dominant males. Again, the females are going to present themselves to the males, and then try and entice them to, of course, mate with her. It normally doesn't take too much for that to happen, though. I was hoping we were going to be able to see it in that moment that I pointed out, but perhaps that's going to happen behind closed doors or behind the trees. And Joan Miller, you said you didn't know that there were different species of baboons. Oh yeah, so we're really lucky. So I would say probably the three most common are the chukma, the yellow, and the olive baboons. But you also get the Guinea baboon. Then you get the Kinder baboon too, and then I never know how to pronounce this one, the Hamadryas baboon. So they all live in different parts of the world. But the chukma baboons are enormous. They are really, really, really big. Olive baboons are, I think, pretty attractive in terms of baboons. They've got this really shaggy coat, this big mane around their necks, which makes them look very fluffy. But then we see chukma baboons in, say, the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape, where the temperatures drop quite a bit in South Africa, and you'll notice that they're far more fluffier, got much denser coat than the baboons up here in the low veldt of South Africa. Oh, there we go. Quite a few of you are chatting here. You said, Autumn, you've just said, I find it interesting what animals meet at the waterhole and become friends, and you wonder what they chat about. I would love it if I could speak to animals. It's the only superpower that I wish to have, is to be able to communicate with animals of all sorts. So from a spider right down to a tadpole, that type of thing would be truly spectacular. Can you imagine what a fantastic safari guide I'd then be? Wow. Um, the stories that I could tell would be so fascinating. And then I don't know, I think this is Luyanda that is saying this, and who's directing it, said that, yeah, there we go. He put a comment, he just sent me a comment, and he said that he learned that there's a hybrid species of chukma baboon and the yellow baboon in Gorongosa National Park, which is interesting because that's in Mozambique, and that the Oxford University are doing studies on them at the moment. So exactly, so it's just so important. I actually have two friends. I suppose actually I haven't seen them in so long now, but two people that I know and used to spend a lot of time with that actually studied baboons, and the stories that they can tell about them is just it's phenomenal. It's so interesting. Again, it's very sad that we don't get to sit and watch them for longer periods, but we've had some great sightings on the cameras. But the best baboon sightings I've ever had in my life are in the Lower Zambezi National Park. I think maybe because people didn't settle there because of the sleeping sickness a very long time ago. So the tsetse flies, so many tsetse flies, and that a lot of the wildlife is just not necessarily afraid of humans. And you see that it's evident, especially in the nocturnal life. So quite often you'll have amazing porcupine sightings that don't necessarily run away. The same thing with civets and genets. And it's not that they're doing anything different. I really just think that there's a lack of civilization in these parts, well, much less than other parts, and they maybe just weren't predated upon, and I just don't have that same relationship, which is very cool. But the baboons are very relaxing. You can sit and watch them for hours and hours, and they always put on a good show. But as all the animals interact with one another, as Autumn said, it's one of her favorite things about waterholes. You can kind of see for the most part, they're not really interested in each other. They're all coming down to do the same thing, and that is to quench their thirst. Some, of course, coming down to cool themselves down. When we see the odd buffalo or elephants coming through, splashing themselves, warthogs coming down for a wallow. And then, of course, even our feathered friends, the birds, plunging into the water and just kind of cooling themselves. Of course, there's all different ways to bird bath. For birds to bath, they don't all just plunge into the water. Then Bill, hello. You said speaking of dogs, you said did Tucker win his competition? Oh my goodness, this is so funny. So Tucker's normally a part of the show because he either barks at something or there's warthogs that come into my house. Like it's always a circus here. It's been quite peaceful for the last couple of days. Although I did chase a warthog around with a pool scoop because it was broken the fence. It was trying to come inside. And I didn't have anything else with me. And obviously, I wanted to keep my distance. So I just kind of encouraged her. Not that she was scared of the pool scoop at all that gets the leaves out. She headbutted it. And I was like, oh, okay, this is working well. But then eventually she turned her back towards me and I just sort of ushered her away. And she moved off very slowly, really reluctantly, in fact. But Tucker didn't win Cute Pets South Africa, sadly. We all know, though, deep down inside, everyone loves him so much, but it was quite limited as to who could vote for him. He came third, though. So he did pretty well. But like I said, he is number one with a lot of people. And if the competition was open to everyone that lives outside of South Africa, I think we would have had very different results. But thank you, Bill, for asking. I forgot about that for a second. Where has this year gone? How are we already in March? It's crazy. I've only just started understanding the last 3 years or so. How people say the older you get, time tends to move quicker. It's scary. It's frightening, in fact. But now all the animals have moved on. You see even the giraffe have already headed towards the tree line, but we'll just sit and wait and maybe something else comes by to have a drink.
Our march to freedom is irreversible. We raise our hands and we say, we will be free! Great mass of South Africans denied their humanity.
So not too much going on, still just one giraffe hanging around in the tree line. I'm wondering if we can maybe pop over to Rosie's pan and see if we can do a little bit of birding. That's always one of my favorite spots. while the zoomies zoom around. So they're the people that are controlling the cameras and look for other interesting things. But we'll see. Loyanda is on it and is searching for amazing things. So I think that's what we're going to do. Let's give Rosie's pan a go. And if it does not work out, well, guess what? We've got a whole bunch of other cameras we can go to. So looking a little bit on the quiet side, but now you can see exactly what I was talking about. Look how dry everything is. Yes, the trees have got green leaves, but if you look just past that, oh no, I think we've frozen. Sorry about that, everybody. A couple of little technical issues, but how can you blame them? It is a Sunday. Perhaps some of the cameras want to rest too. But now we're back in one of everyone's favorite places. We're in the Northern Sabi Sand Game Reserve. Well, it's still part of the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, just the northern section. And at Djuma, we've got a couple of elephants that are just drinking in the corner. But we'll have a little look around here and we might be lucky. Normally we have great bird calls to kind of fill the gaps. It doesn't look like it's too windy. So I'm just going to wait for the audio to pop up on my side and we can have a little listen. Yeah, now I can hear some insects. Maybe some grasshoppers that are stridulating, rubbing their legs together. Maybe even moving their wings. We hear a little bit of the wind now too. Elephants. Looks like a small breeding herd of elephants that maybe just popped around. And normally what they do after they have a drink is, why do you want to be out in the hot sun when you don't have to? But you can see just behind that little road behind the elephants how dense the vegetation comes, and that's a big drainage system. So once upon a time, this drainage system would have run and it all would have connected. But because there was a dam that was built here, you can see that obviously they've dammed up the wall. But the vegetation behind this wall is so fantastic. So animals all go in there. Nice, shady, sleepy spots for the big cats too. And then the elephants can go and feed in there. And there'll probably be some lush vegetation that's still left along the banks of that of the drainage line. You can see they're just happily feeding. But what I was saying while we were at Rosie's pan before we had some problems is now you can have a look at the grass. Look at how it's brown. It's not even brown. It's like it's faded to a yellow color now. It's not particularly tall. It doesn't have the inflorescence on it anymore. So the reproductive parts of the plants, there's no more seeds, which are really tasty. And the leaves are all dry. So it's not that there's not going to be any nutrients in the grass. It's just not what it is when the plants are nice and green. Which is a bit scary because there are a lot of animals that rely on just eating grass. Obviously, with an elephant, it's different. They've got varied diets, and elephants can actually cope quite well, especially in an environment like the low veld in a savanna biome, with the ability to be able to dig and get roots. And they're quite creative about finding water as well. So they normally do so. It's pretty good. Some of the animals, not so much. Shiv, you've said you've asked, did I see the pictures of the baby pink elephant in Kruger? And you've asked, will it stay pink as it gets older, or is it more likely to be predated on? I didn't see it. I have, though, over the past seen a couple of pictures of pink elephants, albino elephants in the Kruger National Park, which is it's a genetic anomaly. I mean, it's crazy to see one of them, and you think to yourself, how on earth are they going to survive in conditions, in the harsh African sun? I mean, one of the biggest not threats is not the right word to do, but to elephants is that they spend their lives trying to stay nice and cool, right? Especially in areas like this, like on today, where the temperature is exceeding well over 38 degrees Celsius. They need to stay cool. They don't have to just drink water to quench their thirst, but they use it for multiple different reasons. And it's going to be very, very difficult for that elephant. I can't say that I've ever come across pictures of adult albino elephants living in the wild. Maybe I must Google that. That'll probably help. There's a bigger library of images. But I haven't done that before. But if anyone has ever seen an adult albino elephant, not a leucistic, because a lot of the time we get leucistic and albino animals confused. So we do see a lot of elephants that have got leucism. You start to see a bit of pigmentation around their ears. You might notice that the hair on the tail is almost like a blonde coloration, and their eyes could even be a lighter color. But that is leucism, not albino. Or albinism, remember, it's a complete lack of melanin, whereas leucism is it's less of a production of melanin. So you'll still see dark, you can still see the markings, you can still see presence of their normal color. It just it kind of comes around in varying degrees. So being predated on, absolutely, but even just a young elephant that's got normal coloration, right, it has a chance of being predated on. But when you live in a social group of animals and you're as big as an elephant and you take no nonsense, it can be quite a tricky thing. And it's not to say that the lions, for an example, the hyenas don't hunt young elephants in this area. It's just not something we see very often. But there are areas that do, where lions have specialized in hunting elephants. Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe is one of them. I think in Savuti as well, up in Botswana, they see it, as well as in Ruaha National Park in Tanzania. But there'll be many other places that lions would have learned how to do that too. And then Starbuck, you've said, do elephant cows ever leave the herd to start a new herd? You know what? I think if they don't have to, they won't. Obviously, they've got really strong bonds, but there could, of course, be certain circumstances that would influence an elephant cow to leave a herd. I mean, we could go on and on for the next 2 years talking about the possibilities. So yes, it can happen. It doesn't happen very often, but I don't think it's necessarily something that is super rare. Especially when you start to get into these really dry conditions, you might find that animals split up a little bit. But it's typically not the behavior that we see. But as you all know, I am very reluctant to say no, because of just how animals do whatever they want when they want. We don't get to set the rules for another species. There's a little three-banded plover. Right, we're going to head back to Oldonyo in Kenya and see maybe that giraffe has come out the tree line, or perhaps some other animals have come down for a drink. Oh, not giraffe, but 2 elephant bulls. How wonderful. We're always so lucky to see some elephants with phenomenal ivory. Not the 2 biggest bulls we've seen, but they've definitely got larger tusks than the average elephant bull. But Kenya, and specifically this Amboseli area, Tsavo area, is known for their tuskers. Big elephants with big tusks. Isn't it just so relaxing? Listening to the sounds of these elephant bulls as they splash water all over their bodies. They've had a drink and now they're focusing on cooling themselves off. You see the one elephant on the left-hand side is secreting from his temporal gland, so that's a substance called temporin. If you can see, that looks like he's crying. A big black streak coming all the way down, just to the left of his eye. You see that? So it's not to say that he is in must, the sort of excited reproductive phase that elephant bulls will go into, but it could be excitement. Who knows? Maybe he was really excited to have a drink today. Maybe something stressed him out. There are a whole host of things that could have caused that to stream, and it happened so quickly. You see it especially when breeding herds of elephants have come across a predator. How just within a matter of minutes, all of a sudden, they start to secrete that substance. Bill, you're wondering if I'm worried that there haven't been good rains around in the Sabi Sand. So it's not just the Sabi Sand. It's kind of like it's all over, sort of in the Mpumalanga, Limpopo provinces. We are noticing it. I'm opening my weather app now, Bill. We all know that I'm obsessed with following the weather, and that I quite often have to delete weather apps because I stopped following them. But I really love following them when big weather systems are building off in the ocean and are making their way towards us. So currently I'm just looking and literally near Beira, which is in Mozambique. So much further north of where Maputo is. That's much closer to the border of South Africa along the east coast. There's a big system, kind of, you should be able to follow it. I'm sure you can find an app. I use an app called Windy. It's just very easy, user-friendly on a mobile phone. But it's literally in this between Mozambique and Madagascar, but now moving quite close to Madagascar. So I need to just check to see what's happening there. But if I start to scroll along, right, and I open up what the weather is going to be like where I am, and we all know that I live in Hoedspruit because I tell you 555 times, and I start to look, right? So I go across and I can start to see. And yeah, it's changed again. It's unbelievable how much it's changed. Earlier this morning, it was showing me that on Wednesday, there was rain that was coming through, quite big rain. And now the rain has disappeared for Wednesday. It's just saying that the winds start to pick up to exceptional speeds, over 50 kilometers an hour, or gusting at over 50 kilometers an hour. And then into Thursday, the temperatures drop substantially. So they drop by about between 7 to 9 degrees Celsius. And then it looks like there's a thunderstorm on Thursday afternoon. And then the winds pick up again, gusting over 60 kilometers an hour. But now the winds seem to have started to disappear a little bit. So this is really interesting. And unfortunately, as you know, when you start to get big winds, it can affect how quickly a weather system moves over an area. And what we've been seeing lately is we're getting a lot of lightning. But then the storm clouds don't break. The wind moves them on too quickly before, like, the rain, the droplets can even fall from the clouds. So let me just check. Let me just see what's happening here. No, it doesn't look like there's much rain. But it might change. I always joke. I'm like, what an amazing career to go into, hey? To be a meteorologist and not really have to worry about whether your predictions are right or wrong. Everyone just kind of accepts it. I'd love that. I get scrutinized for when I say something that's maybe not correct. I feel like I've chosen a worse career. Could you imagine me as a weather preventer. I don't even know what you call them. I'm so sorry if I'm offending anybody, but my vocabulary is very limited. So just going back to the younger elephant bull that was here, we were talking about the stream of temporin coming out of his temporal glands. Autumn, you've asked if that elephant's tusk would have caused him pain. I'm sure it would have been sore, but I don't think it's going to cause any long-standing pain. Maybe think of it like when you break your teeth, but you don't break the tooth all the way down, so you don't hit the nerve endings. So it's like maybe uncomfortable, but you can kind of get used to it, except for the fact we play with it with our tongue and we end up cutting our tongue, especially if it's rough, or maybe you cut the side of your gums. So yeah, probably not a pleasant experience initially, but then that's kind of it. Where you, if that tusk is broken much higher up, um, I suppose it's going to be different for every elephant, right? As to where the nerves kind of start, it's a bit difficult to tell. But the way that I describe the nerve endings in an elephant tusk, it kind of reminds me of a tentacle. So you can't see them, and if they broke their tusk at that point, that would be incredibly painful. I don't know how they would deal with something like that. They'd probably be very grumpy elephants, because we all know what a toothache feels like. One of the worst pains out there. And Joan Mello, you're wondering how old these elephants are. It's always tricky to say. I think I've gone through it quite a bit, and I know sometimes you're probably going, Taylor, you've said that 1,000 times, but there are always new people that are watching and that are interested in. We as humans have this fascination with how old things are, right? So with aging animals, it can always be a little bit tricky. There are obviously guidelines out there, but you have to take into consideration their genetics, and just by looking at an animal, you don't necessarily know what genes have been passed down to them. So that's always a tough one. I would say this elephant bull that we're looking at right now, he's probably in his he's a big individual, much larger than the bull that he was standing next to. You can see his tusks are quite worn. He's even worn down a nice little groove in his right tusk. That's one that he would favor quite often. Maybe using that to break branches consistently, and eventually just wearing down into the tusk itself. I'd say he's probably in his late 30s. So older than 35, but I think maybe even in his early 40s. Maybe closer, yeah. If I had to really say, I would just give an estimation, maybe like 38, 39 years old. But again, it's very difficult to say. He still looks like he's maybe got a bit of growing to do. But what a beautiful animal. But I could be horribly inaccurate. It's very difficult to age them. Another impala ram moving in slowly. You're going to come drink next to the elephant? Or you're just going to walk on by? You can see his body to head to leg ratio is in proportion. Got very long legs though. And maybe his body is going to fill out a little bit more. You can kind of see that his head looks quite large, almost like he needs to get a little bit bigger around the shoulder area, fill out a bit. That is a big elephant. And Bill from Myrtle Beach, you've just said that you could watch these elephants all day long. Oh, here's a great moment for a screenshot, everybody. We're waiting for the impala to walk between the elephant's legs. Will we get it? There it is. Would have been nice if we were still zoomed in that same spot, but I'm not controlling the cameras. I'm very sorry. There's another opportunity. I even stopped and paused for you, which is great. It's always tricky when the animals don't stop and they keep moving. Now you can see, look at this elephant, how he's just relaxed. He's got his trunk sort of stretched out onto the ground, having a little sniff around, just really taking it in, having a nice peaceful Sunday. Probably picking up on lots of different scents left behind by other elephants. No, two impala rams chasing each other. Of course they are. Okay, we're going to give Rosie's pan another bash and see if we can do a little bit of birding. Oh, never mind the birds. We're just watching elephants. It's like a breeding herd of elephants have come through. Some of them are already moving off. And they were joined by a elephant bull. This is a really nice example. Do you see how small his head is in comparison to that bull we were just looking at? Do you notice that? I always look at that as an example because elephant bulls' heads, they get enormous. They're huge. They're like these tanks. And so this one here has still got quite a bit of growing to do. Yeah, we haven't quite figured out the issue just yet, but definitely improving. So we're going to move away from Rosie's pan, but we're going to head to another waterhole, also in Oliphant's West Game Reserve. Here we go. Now we're at Naledi Dam. And it looks like the elephants have emptied the well. Only the water sits up nice and high. And it all looks pretty stirred up. Just waiting for the audio again on my side to come through. I definitely should be able to hear this elephant splashing around in the water, or at least as he steps in the water. I can hear it just a little bit. I kind of have to stick my ear to my speaker. I can just hear him as he exits the water, also not sticking around for too long.
If you are a driven nature enthusiast With a background in communications, then this message is for you. WildEarth is calling for volunteers to moderate our web and social media chat platforms during our live broadcasts. Do you keep up with the latest trends on social media? Do you have quick fingers and a sharp eye? Then we're looking for you. To apply, email your CV to us at jobs@wildearth.tv. Join the WildEarth team today. WildEarth, connecting with nature.
Wow, really seeing these elephants stretching down. I wonder if there is any water in there at all. Oh, there we go. Never mind. That answers my question. And last week when I was hosting live at the Waterhole, we noticed the same thing. So with there not being much rain, perhaps the borehole, as I suspect there will be one here, that is just pumping groundwater into this little well itself. It could be low, it could be an issue with the pump, or it could just be that the elephants are just drinking so much of this water, which would also make sense because they, not that they won't, but if there's a different, fresher choice of water, they'd rather drink that. And you can see that the actual dam itself to the left is looking rather gross, is the only way I can put it. Like I probably wouldn't even put my feet in that. That's not for me, that dirty water. Great to wallow in, I'm sure, but not looking so great. So there's obviously a lot of pressure on this well at the moment. There's not much activity though around this particular waterhole. I'm surprised we haven't had a herd of impala come down to have a drink, but it is so hot, maybe everything is just resting in the shade and will come down a little bit later. Now my eyes are zooming into that dark shadow at the back to make sure there's no leopard lying there. I'll never forget that. And since we had that leopard, I didn't even notice it for ages. I don't think anyone noticed it for quite some time. Now I will always check that exact spot. It's funny how things like that happen to you just once. It's like I saw a leopard in that tree. I will check it every time I go past. We all form these weird little habits as guides. Now you can see again this young elephant bull, not in a rush, feeling the different textures, just having a drink, just taking it easy, so relaxed that he's even taken the weight off of his back left leg. Oh, terrapin heads. No, come back, no lady down. Lots of terrapin heads. And the shadow of an elephant. That's quite interesting. All these little terrapins that we see, for the most part, they are omnivores. They'll eat a little bit of plant matter. Sorry, I had to call my friend's dog back. I'm babysitting. Some friends of mine have gone into Kruger, so I'm on all dog sitting duty. And we're learning about having the front door open and not going outside. You might hear him panting now, Sonny. Canine Bill, you've asked if elephants ever suffer from things like bloat or acid reflux due to the amount of water and food all at once. That's a very good question. I don't know. I just quickly had a look on the internet as well, because also they're not something I've necessarily come across. But I'm not entirely sure if they would ever suffer from anything like that. I can't say. Oh, it's so difficult, and especially wild animals. They're so tough, and they hide, their symptoms really well. Like if you and I've got a stomach ache or we've got acid reflux, firstly, everyone will know about it because we'll tell them that. But there are things that we do that, people can visually see. And it's just, you don't always see that with elephants. Like they just kind of plod along and carry on. They're just amazing how resilient they are. I will, however, send a message to a friend of mine that studies elephants, and ask him if he knows anything about that. But I couldn't really find anything on the internet either. But yeah, great question. It's definitely one to think about. Having a nice little scratch on that well.
Oh, how time flies when you're having fun. Daylight saving time for the US and Europe has arrived. The 10th of March will see the US shift an hour forward, and the 31st of March will see Europe and the UK also shift an hour forward. Stay connected to nature from wherever you are in the world. Go to our website to find out more. Don't miss a moment with WildEarth.
So, everything is just gone and just left us. Not even the terrapins are poking their heads above the water. So we're going to head off to another camera and try our luck. Let's head to Madikwe Game Reserve and see what we see. Oh, there we go. This is a refreshing scene, right? We've got giraffe coming down to have a drink. So different species from the giraffe that we were looking at earlier in Kenya. We're now with a southern giraffe, variety of bird species, and a young elephant that looks like it's going to go and chase the giraffe. Let's see. Or you're just sneaking back around. You just see how it's got its tail extended away from its body. It's definitely all aimed at the giraffe. So let's try pan a little bit to the left. We'll keep the giraffe on the right-hand side of the screen, and then we'll just keep it open a bit to see if this little elephant does come charging towards the giraffe. It's always quite funny when things like that happen. But I think as that little elephant got closer to the giraffe, it went, oh, quite tall. Maybe I can't take you. So, off it went back to mom. So it looks like it's disappeared now. And we've got another young elephant also just having a drink in the muddy water. You can just see, actually that's actually really interesting. You can see the color difference of the water as that elephant sticks its trunk in and moves it around. How that sort of film moves away, like probably lots of algae. And a kudu also coming through. Okay, here we go. Now we've got an elephant bull on the left, which might usher the giraffe out of the way, but even he has stopped to think about his next move. And from my point of view, it looks like the Egyptian geese are watching the action. Nosy birds, those ones. Hi, Ola. So lovely to hear from you. You've said, can I please name some of the bird calls in the background? Okay, I can't hear. Sorry, I seem to be having audio issues again. So I can't hear them very well. I could hear a ringneck dove. Can you hear that? Poop, choop, 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 choop. That sounds like it is a Cameroptera. Or, this is where again, because we know that I'm not the world's best birder, or it could be a palace. But I'm not exactly sure which one of the two it is. Again, I can't, there's always these sort of slight differences, but I've got my ear against my computer speaker, desperately trying to hear what's going on. Definitely hear some pied crows in the background. Very faint, very, very faint for me. And I think that's the best I'm going to be able to do in terms of bird IDs, or at least identifying their calls. Okay, let's see. We've got an elephant approaching the kudu, but I think that the elephant really just wants to walk on the pathway that the kudu is standing on. You can see how it's been worn into the ground itself. And the kudu are just approaching the water's edge slowly. They know that there are crocodiles and other predators that could potentially be around. But I think right now they are making sure that they don't stumble across a croc. You can see ears pointed forward, on high alert, stretching their necks down, then taking a few steps back. Just sussing out the situation. Not one kudu is like, no, this is all too much for me. Elephants, potential of crocodiles. We're going to get out of here. The giraffe being quite stubborn, not worrying about going anywhere at all. You can see how the elephants in the middle, how they've got their ears raised, making themselves look bigger. And then one giraffe barging on through. Everybody get out of my way. Canine Girl, you've said, why do I think that antelope species seem to thrive in such large numbers compared to other species? So firstly, there are actually lots of different species that form social groups, from birds even to some arthropod species. We look at ants as an example, termites, to, of course, a variety of different mammals, predators and the herbivores. Um, I wouldn't say that they necessarily thrive, because if we look at in comparison, I don't have the exact statistics, and the statistics on every different reserve or national park will probably be quite different. But antelope species are predated on more than, for example, something like giraffe. They're definitely targeted. They're a much easier target, whether it's a leopard catching one of them, or a cheetah going after a youngster, or a pride of lions hunting a big kudu bull, just because we're looking at kudu. So I wouldn't say that they necessarily thrive as much, but they've also got much shorter gestation periods. So I don't know if this is maybe something that also factors it, the fact that they will give birth every year to a youngster. Of course, it just depends on what we're talking about. So yeah, so maybe that gives the illusion. But if you look at how many young animals, especially antelope, lambs or fawns, most of them won't ever make it to adulthood at all.
Better is more than a word to us. It's a commitment to conserve our nation's precious landscapes, oceans, and wildlife. It's more sustainable fishing and farming practices, jobs and prosperity for our communities, and access to clean drinking water for all. Better is believing that together we can make a difference. For nature and for you.
this is a lovely scene. All the kudus changing their position, deciding that it's much easier to come and drink down here rather than being harassed by all the animals wanting to drink from the same spot. And like the giraffe have really just stolen the show there. The elephants seem to have moved off. You can still see the kudu though. Look how wary they are. Even as they drink, you can see how they'll fixate on a spot, and as soon as one kind of moves away, most of them will pop their heads up and react to that. And it's important when you're living in a social group to understand each other's cues, because that could mean the difference between life and death. Normally when an attack happens, I say attack, but I mean animals, the predators are just hunting, right? They're just doing what they need to do to survive. It happens so quickly, literally within a blink of an eye, especially if it's something like a crocodile lurking below the water, for them to launch themselves out and grab hold of a limb of one of these kudus, and they'll be able to do that very easy. You can see that cow just on the left. He's got her ears sort of spread out wide. He's even sniffing the air desperately and trying to make sure that there's nothing around. But they do have to come and quench their thirst. Crystal, you've asked if all kudu stripes are the same or are they individual to each one. So it's a nice example. If we look at all these kudus here, you can see the different patterns on them. You can see, there they go, that one kudu that's just female that's walking out to the left now. She's quite big. Look how she doesn't have as many stripes lower down, or further down her back, sorry, towards her tail. It's almost like they've completely vanished. And then you look at some of the others, and the stripes are much closer together, much more prominent. So sometimes they'll have a similar number of stripes, but they won't always be in the same places. So they're definitely unique. I mean, look at that individual. Maybe that's just actually a little bit of mud that she's got on her. I think actually I was going to say, look at that marking, but I think that's perhaps come from her tail. That maybe it was in a bit of mud and she swatted it on her back, and it's created that unusual sort of circular pattern. It's also great, you can see the different colorations that kudu have, which is not always very obvious. That really dark grey neck and nice brown body with a slightly lighter legs too. And they do stand out like a sore thumb when they're out in the open, but pop them behind a couple of bushes and they're almost rendered invisible. Just normally the flick of the tail or a twitch of an ear that will catch your attention and reveal their presence. Lots of little birds, some common moorhens. No, is that a common moorhen? No, it's a red-knobbed coot. And then I saw there were some Egyptian geese. There was an African spoonbill at one point. Oh, where have all the birds gone? There's the Egyptian geese and the blacksmith lapwing. Goodness, all this aquatic vegetation, all these water lilies. These are not doing too well. You can see they're not even enough water to really float on the surface. And that's a common moorhen that we just passed. And some more blacksmith lapwings. There's something else at the back there, but can't quite see what it is. Who have we got here? Oh no. We've got a sandpiper. Wait. Little 3-banded plover, not having any of it though. I think it might have been a wood sandpiper that we just had a quick look at. Let me just double check. Yeah. Definitely a wood sandpiper. Maybe we can have a look at it again as it comes towards us. So it's just something that I was looking at. You can see it's got quite white underparts to it. A little bit of sort of streaking on the chest, quite high up. And then that very white supercilium, that eyebrow. It's got a white orbital ring. And we can't see its yellow legs because they're covered in mud at the moment. But the fact that it doesn't have sort of white moving towards where the wing is, like again, if we could see a bird's shoulder, imagine where that is, and that would make it a common sandpiper. And off it goes. That's your lovely view. There's the common moorhen. All just doing feeding in different scenarios. Sandpiper pecking off the surface of the water, and the moorhen searching the leaves of the lilies for any insects. And also a dragonfly. That was nice. That was the closest view we've had of a dragonfly, well, I've had for a long time on the show. So that 3-banded plover that was not particularly happy with the sandpiper's presence, they're always chasing each other around.
Experience captivating wildlife documentaries showcasing incredible animal behavior for free by visiting lionmountain.tv or downloading the app, accessible on both Apple and Android platforms.
Still just the birds really providing us with, well, as much action as birds can provide. All just feeding. Who else have we got that we haven't mentioned? I did see some red-billed teals as well as a yellow-billed duck. So it seems like the whole gang is here. But not one crocodile, though. It's dried up so much on this side. Perhaps there's a crocodile lurking in this murky water. Hello, three-banded plover. What are you doing? Just standing, keeping your legs nice and cool. Having a look. Looks like it's just some dried up lily leaves or some part of aquatic vegetation. Cheetahs and other animals, you said that this bird action is amazing. Yeah, I suppose. It's just like everything is feeling a little bit hot and lazy today. There hasn't been too much going on. Been one of those pretty quiet waterhole shows. And now that the weavers have also raised their chicks and they've fledged, we're not seeing any weaver action anymore. And that was always fun. That definitely kept us entertained. And the giraffes moving in the background. Wildebeest, of course, sitting out in the sun as they normally do. And those are the weaver nests that I was telling you about just a moment ago. You can see they're all really brown now. There's no bright yellow birds fussing about. Well, it's not to say that these nests are not going to be used anymore. There'll be a bunch of other bird species that might use them to overnight in. Often find smaller bird species. Things like cutthroat finch, they will quite often inhabit old weaver nests. Might even find a snake could curl up in there, right? RJT, it's only a pleasure. That's what I'm here to do, to identify the birds. There was a grey heron that you could just see moving in the back, and then of course the Egyptian geese just down below. And those are the pied crows that we could hear gurgling in the distance. They're now making their way down to the water's edge to have a drink. You can see they've got their beaks open quite wide. And if we were closer, we would see their throats fluttering quite a bit, performing the gular flutter, just trying to cool down. And crows are hilarious to watch. They're so interesting. I'll never forget my brother sending me a video once of a crow. He's just laughing in the video, and I wish I still had it. And it's basically just this crow on a piece of railing, just hanging from it upside down, and then it drops to the ground, then jumps up on top of the railing, and then jumps down and grabs on with its feet, and then dangles upside down like it's pretending to be a bat. And I have no idea why it was doing that, but Sean said it did it for, I don't know, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So it must have just been having a little bit of fun. I don't know, testing out a new strategy, sleeping strategy perhaps, or I don't know, maybe enjoying the head rush. Who knows? So if you're wondering how to tell the difference between the pied crows and the white-necked ravens, if you've got the bird looking at you from the front and you can see it has a big white breast, then you know it can't be a white-necked raven because their breast is black. And if you're still not convinced, you can also look at the size and shape of the beak. The ravens have got a much heavier set beak than the crows do. There's a small group of elephants coming out of the tree line. And it looks like some of them have splashed themselves with water before, so maybe it was that same group we saw earlier that came to have a drink, then just ducked in towards the sickle bush and now doing a loop to go elsewhere. Oh, Shiv, you're so sweet. You said it's always a blast when I'm hosting the show. Thank you so much. That means more than you'll ever know. And that you said you're off to put some icing on your lemon cake that's been baking. And you said, oh, it's Mother's Day in the UK, so it's time to spoil your mum. Well, happy Mother's Day to everybody. Our Mother's Day in South Africa is on the 9th of... No, that's Women's Day. When's Mother's Day? I've forgotten. I've completely forgotten when Mother's Day is. Mom? No, my mom doesn't even know when Mother's Day is, so that's good. It's anyways, so yeah, well that's awesome, and the lemon cake sounds delicious. It's probably one of my favorite cakes, in fact. But now the zebra is also just barging through, making sure they have their spot to drink, pushing straight through the giraffe. They don't really care at all. And there's the big stallion. You can see, look how large his neck is. Very large forequarters. But it's just a wonderful, peaceful afternoon, as Sundays should be. I hope that you have all enjoyed this live at the Waterhole show. But of course, as you know, it'll be on tomorrow and the next day and the next day after that. So if you did miss out, well, there's always next time. And thank you to everybody that sent through a question and a comment. I love chatting with you all today. I will see you, I think, only on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe it's not even Thursday. Maybe it might be the week after. But I'll be here to chat. So until then, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I will see you all soon.
A very good afternoon to everybody watching, and welcome to Djuma Private Game Reserve with myself, Chad. On camera today we've got Paul, and welcome to On Safari.